Toda Rabba. So, good morning, everybody. So we're continuing our series that we started, and we had a 2-week break with the series. So a lot happened. So I'll remind very, very quickly where we got to, and we'll continue in the next 2 shiurim, and then we'll complete this 4 shiurim series. And what we've discussed in the previous 2 weeks that we did is we started with, as an introductory thing, I said there is a negative commandment called Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. You should not ignore if someone is in life danger, you need to save him. And then we saw machloket poskim whether you are obligated even to risk your life in order to save one, or you're not. And there is a logic to say that you're not, because there are only 3 averot that one has to give up his life in order not to violate them, and that is avodah zara, gilui arayot, and shfichut damim, and lo ta'amod al dam re'echa is not one of them. So that's the logic behind the opinion that says that, yes, you have an obligation to help someone that you see that is in life danger, but not at the extent of risking your life. And there's another opinion that says that you are obligated even to risk your life. Now, if we follow the opinion that you're not obligated to risk your life, and I also explained the logic right now, then, of course, the question is, how come, what gives the right, or the heter, whatever you want, to, let's say, a soldier to risk his life in order to save other people? What gives the government any halachic authority to risk life of soldiers, etc.? After all, it's not one of the 3 averot. Now, we did go into a discussion, and I have to mention it, is that there was a radical opinion of Rabbi Meir Simcha Midvinsk, a giant that lived in the 19th century, beginning of 20th century. Rabbi Meir Simcha Midvinsk, that wrote the books Meshech Chochma on the Torah and Or Sameach on the Rambam. And in both of his books, here you saw that I'm an Israeli. Okay, so in both of his books, we've seen that he has a radical opinion that one is not obligated to risk his life even in order to save Klal Yisrael. Not only one is not obligated to risk his life in order to save a Jew, but he's not even obligated to risk his life in order to save Klal Yisrael. And he proved it from Maimonides, from a pasuk in Shmot, and from Maimonides regarding Rotzeach B'Shgaga. Yeah, that he doesn't leave his sheltered city, even if all the people of Israel need him in order to save them. Now we have shown, and that's where we concluded, we have shown that there is no proof from the Rambam, most of Achronim say. Still, then the problem, and that the reason why the Rambam doesn't let the Rotzeach B'Shgaga to go out of the sheltered city is not because he's risking his life, but rather that's the punishment of a Rotzeach B'Shgaga, that he is living there and buried there and is not allowed to go out under any condition, even in order to save Klal Yisrael. But then, of course, the question that was asked by Avraham, okay, great, but that doesn't make sense. Pikuach Nefesh is doche kol Torah kula. So because of this, Rav Asher Weiss, with all the respect, is kvetching the Rambam in my humble eyes and saying, no, it's not really a pikuach nefesh, it's a need. Indeed, if it was a pikuach nefesh, he would have been allowed to go out. That's not the pshat of the Rambam, not the pshat Rambam says clearly, even le'edut nefashot, meaning he is the only one that can save a Jew in his testimony. He's still not going out. So it's very, very hard to explain the way Rabbi Asher Weiss explains, in my humble eyes. Then that leaves the Rambam still that it requires an explanation. And then we said the pshat explanation, it is indeed innovative, but Reb Unterman says that, and many Achronim say that. Reb Unterman most clearly. Some British proudness, right? So yeah, Liverpool. I understand. Liverpool. Well, that's my team. As a kid, I was a fan of Liverpool. You know, Keegan, Dalglish. You know, all the. At any rate. Here, with what he explains, and that's very clear, that indeed the Rotzech B'Shgaga, it's a ransom. He's really dead, okay? And that means that he has galut. Galut is a form of death, and his life is constrained. That his life is limited to that city. Therefore, even if Klal Yisrael are in danger, not relevant, okay? That's the way it is. So that's the pshat of the Mishnah and Makos and the Rama. Now we're returning to square one, meaning at the end of the day, since we dismissed the proofs of the Or Sameach, and we reached the most intuitive and logical conclusion that even if you hold like many poskim, that one is not obligated to risk his life in order to save a Jew that is in danger, that he sees him. But all of them will agree that in order, if what's at stake is saving Klal Yisrael, you have an obligation to risk your life. And then the question is, what is the halachic basis for it? Again, lo tamud al dam re'echa is not one of the three commandments that one is supposed to give up his life. So what is the halachic basis? Again, I'm returning to the fact that one is obligated to risk his life in order to save Klal Yisrael. What gives the authority to a government to send soldiers to risk their lives, etc., etc. So now, this is what we'll do. We'll deal with in this year and in the next year. And of course, I'll make also soon a comment about current events, but wait for that. Okay, v'chai bahem velo sheyamut bahem. You see the title. V'chai bahem velo sheyamut bahem bizman milchama. Yeah, as we know, the reason why one is not obligated generally to risk his life, and maybe even prohibited to risk his life in order to keep the Torah, aside from the three exceptions of the Shalosh Averot, is because there is a verse in Yoma, we learned it in the first year, V'chai bahem ele hamitzvot asher yaseh v'achukim asher yaseh otam ha'adam v'chai bahem. These are the mitzvos that one should keep, says the Torah in Vayikra, v'chai bahem, and he should live within them, by them, however you want to translate it. And our sages are darshaning, v'chai bahem v'lo sheyamut bahem. The mitzvos should be associated with life and should not cause you death. Okay? So, where is that Russia going to in a time of war? Okay? Yes?
This is black and white. Is it obligated or not obligated? What if a person has the feeling that I must do something?
Right. So first of all, we want to establish the fact that he's obligated even. But then you need to understand, and here I won't elaborate it, but we already presented the machloket between the Rambam and the Balei HaTosfos. The Rambam holds that it's a binary system. Either you're obligated to give up your life, or you're prohibited to give up your life. There's no middle ground of, you're not obligated, but if you're a chassid, then be moser your nefesh. According to the Rambam, this doesn't exist. That's the pshat of the Rambam. The pshat, we'll return to it. So the pshat of the Rambam is that there are only two options. If you read the Rambam in the code book, in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, in the chapters that are talking about Kiddush Hashem, it's very, very clear. Some situations, the minority, of course, one has to give up his life in order to keep the three Averot, not to transgress the three Averot, or if it's Shat Hashmad or whatever. And if it's Shabbos, Machlot Asurot, he is an Avaryan. If he he says, no, I love Hashem, I want to still keep it and give up my life, no good. That's Rambam. However, Balei HaTosfot, based on some Agados in Gittin about the kids of Ma'arik, and we know that in the Crusades also, that they held that there is this middle option, meaning situations when you're not obligated to give up your life, but if you do it, it's a pious, it's very, very praiseworthy. So these are two visions. Now, let's go back to our question. The situation is that Klal Yisrael are at risk, and now the question is, do I have even if I hold that just to save an individual, I don't have any obligation, perhaps even a prohibition, to risk my life in order to save him? What happens when Klal Yisrael are in sakana? So let's go. Ha'amek davar. So let's first start with the approach of the Netziv and the Chatam Sofer. Okay? Let's see it. Ha'amek davar comments on the pasuk that prohibits murder as one of the 7 Noahide Sheva Mitzvot Bnei Noach. The verse goes this way: Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech ki b'tzelem Elokim asa et ha'adam. Yeah? If and the verse beforehand says, if someone murders, miyad ish et achiv et roshoto, meaning that God will punish anyone who spills blood of another person. Here we're not talking even about Jews. Yeah, we're talking humanity. Okay? So now, miyad ish et achiv, peiresh hakadosh baruch hu. Matai adam ne'nash, when should a person be punished for bloodshed? Yeah, for killing. B'sha'ah she'ra'ui linok b'achva, at a time where it's appropriate, which is Baruch Hashem most times, to act one towards the other in achva, in brotherhood, in love. Ma she'ein ken, yeah, the mem shin aleph kaf is Rashi Tevot, ma she'ein ken. But as opposed to that, bishat milchama ve'et lisno, at a time of war, and it's a time of hatred, as et laharog, then it's a time of killing. Ve'ein onesh al ze klal, and no one is getting punished for it. Ki kach nosad ha'olam. Look, the Netziv says something. He says, war, currently at least, yeah, we pray to the Lo yisa goel goy cherev, yeah, that there will be peace in the world. But he says, realistically, at the current situation of the world, writes the Netziv, he says, part of the world, of the phenomena, of the natural, realistic phenomena of the world, that there are wars between nations. That's part of the human experience. And he says, this is what's going on. And therefore, if there is a war between nations, then you don't judge a soldier that kills a soldier from the enemy. You don't see him. That doesn't fall under the umbrella of the 7 Noahide, not to murder. Ukedeita b'shvuot, and he brings a Gemara in Shvuot that says, Malchuta dekat lachad meshita lo mi'anash. A malchus, and they're not talking here about Jews, dafka, okay? A government, a malchut, that is killing 1/6 of its population, lo mi'anash. And then they say, afilu melech, it kills it during a war. Vafilu melech Yisrael, and even a Jewish king, here you see that the Gemara talks not about a Jewish kingdom, but says the Netziv, even a Jewish kingdom, he is allowed, mutar lasot milchemet hareshut. There is a concept, there is a milchemet mitzvah, and there is also a concept of milchemet reshut. What's the heter for milchemet reshut? So where a king of Israel sends Jewish soldiers to be killed of not milchemet mitzvah, but milchemet reshut? How come? He says, yeah, that's the point. Afal pisha kamim Israel yargu al yedei zeh. Even though this king, Israel, that is announcing a milchemet reshut, the consequence of this is that Jewish soldiers will be killed, he has a halachic right to do that because the general prohibition on murder is not applicable in a situation of war, because war, that's part of phenomena that happens in the world, that nations sometimes have wars with other nations. So, in a nutshell, the Netziv really says that the heter, we'll call it, or the fact that a Jewish soldier, even though lo tamod al dam re'echa, even though you're moser nefesh l'chora, according to Jewish law, only on 3 averot, but he says war is something else, and war, its halachic validity, we'll coin the term, is kind of dina de malchuta dina, meaning it's part of. The Netziv doesn't use the phrase dina de malchuta dina, so one can argue that it's not exactly what it means, but that's the general concept. This is the way the world operates, and the fact that that's the agreement between the nations. Rabbi Israeli, by the way, Rabbi Israeli sharpens it more, and Rabbi Israeli says that the whole halachic validity, again, of wars is dina de malchuta dina, in a sense that that's an agreement between nations, that in some cases, if there's no resolution to a conflict on terror or whatever, they make wars. And he says, of course, we pray that we'll reach other days, but this is the current situation. And by the way, Rabbi Israeli, based on that, has even a halachic implication. He says that, here I'll give you, let's say you captured a soldier of the enemy, and he's now, that's it, he is, how do you say it? He's no more danger. Okay, you arrested a terrorist, and he is neutralized, but in a sense not neutralized as lashon nakia, to killed, but rather he's no danger anymore. So we know that according to the Geneva Convention, you can't kill him. All right, even if he's the most evil person in the world that deserves death morally, whatever. But these are the rules of war, So now comes, let's say, a rabbi. Theoretical, I'm taking, no, but I'm serious. There are some rabbis speaking like that. That's Christian morality. This actually, the Jewish values is you should smack him and kill him, even if you captured him. And this is just the Christian, modern, Western morals and ethics, and we're not bound to that. You can hear such a rhetoric from some rabbis.
Sure.
So Rabbi Kannai humbly disagrees with these rabbis and says, but Rabbi Kannai, who's Rabbi Kannai? But let's speak about Rabbi Israeli. He's a giant. Okay? So Rabbi Israeli says, Dina de Malchuta Dina, the whole basis for the halachic legality of war is the Dina, that is what the Netziv speak, the agreement between nations. So if they now agree, as opposed to the time of the Tanakh, that parts of the laws of war is that you don't kill a captured a prisoner, then if you don't follow that, there is no halachic basis for the bloodshed and the war, because it's all based on the agreement how the nations agreed to do Bichlal wars and to do wars one with the others. And now I'll say my own take. I think that the fact that humanity progressed a little bit, shtickle, morally, that we don't kill captured enemies, we as Jews should endorse it. We shouldn't say, that's Christian morality, whatever. Well, Bichlal lo.
Is it from the 7 mitzvot of B'nai Noach?
What?
Just what you said now, that not to kill that person.
No, I repeat again, since the whole basis, according to Rabbi Israeli, some rabbis disagree with him, but since the whole basis for the legality, halachic legality of war, is dina de malchuta dina, the agreement between nations, so you're bound to what they agree. And if the Geneva Convention has a certain standard, you don't kill captured enemies, you're not looting, all kinds of stuff.
How about the Torah probably influenced it historically to get to that point. But just stom the Torah possession. It seems that someone can't defend himself from when.
From what?
How do you start the whole thing here? That a person.
What do you mean defend? I don't get it. I'm sorry.
To kill somebody.
What?
What was the main point you were trying to make in the beginning?
Okay, the main. Let's now go back to the main point. The main point is we asked under what right a Jewish king, a Jewish government can risk the life of its soldiers. Okay, so one answer is Dina de Malchuta Dina, and that answer, as you all recognize, is applicable not only to a Jewish king but also to a Goyish king. Now let's see the Minchas Asher. Okay, go to the third source, the third chunk of sources, the Minchas Asher. ועל כל פנים מבואר בדברי החתם סופר שיסוד הלכה זו משום דינא דמלכותא. Yeah, so as opposed to the Netziv, the Chassam Sofer speaks clearly that says the halachic basis of war is דינא דמלכותא, ורשות ביד המלך לשלוח בני עמו למלחמה, ומצווים המה להילחם ולהיהרג. And he says clearly, and that is applicable not only to Jewish wars, but Bechlal, wars in general. And then now skip to the line, Ach lulei divreim.
Would a prime minister be like a melech?
Okay, we'll get to that later. Ach lulei divreihem, it's a good question, and we'll get to that later. Ach lulei divreihem, you see where it's in the middle of the source, there is a line that starts with the word ach. אך לולי דבריהם נראה תפי שאין זה עניין כלל להדה דינא דמלכותא דינא. וההלכה זו לא ניתנה אלא בדיני ממונות. ואין זה עניין כלל לדיני מלחמה. Okay, so now the Rabbi Asher Weiss says, I disagree. I humbly disagree with the Netziv and the Chatam Sofer. Dina de Malchuta Dina is a very limited halachic concept that applies only to your obligation as an American or Canadian citizen to pay taxes or to follow laws of that state, okay? But it is not extending to the authority of a government to do wars. Dina de Malchuta Dina is simply regarding taxes, etc. And then he says, Uve'emet, and in reality, Asur liyehudi listaken b'milchama lo lo. Actually, it's prohibited on a Jew. Let's say I'm an American citizen, or in World War I, a German citizen, a French citizen, whatever it is, a British citizen. A Jew is prohibited to risk his life in a war that has nothing to do with him. ולאבד את חייו בשירותו של עריץ מגויי הארץ, and to lose his life serving some Goyish empire. אלא אם כן חייו של בני אבינו בסכנה, unless it's in order to save lives of Jews. ואז אפשר דאבים, and then maybe it's a מלחמת מצווה. So Rabbi Asher Weiss says, I disagree with the concept of Dina de Malchuta Dina. To apply, and consequently, I don't think that a Jew has any halachic right to risk his life in participating in a war of another king when he's in exile. I don't think he has any right, and tachlis halacha l'maaseh, you should try to get away from it, etc. Well, I'll tell you.
It's not practical.
That's another question. Though Jews found all kinds of ways to get away, in Russia and other cases. That's what he mentioned before. For the lack of time, there was an interesting discussion there that I skipped, but we don't have the time for that. I'll just say, even if I accept Reb Asher Weiss' halachic claim that Dina de Malchut Adina is not applicable here. And as I said, the Netziv, the Chatam Sofer, and Rabbi Israeli all held that Dina de Malchut Adina is applicable here. Okay? So, Rabbi Asher Weiss disagrees. And consequently, he says a Jew should try to get away from participating in wars of foreign regimes. Watch now, Phil. One second, Phil. I have a little problem with what Rabbi Asher Weiss says, and I'll phrase it: the problem of being a parasite. Let me just explain. I'm living for 70 years. My parents and I are living in a certain country for years. We benefit from all the goods that government gives us and anything. And then when they're in a war with another country, then I'm saying, hello, I'm a Jew. That has nothing to do with me. I have a little problem with that. Okay? Yes, Phil.
Two things. First of all, it's not practical because you'll go to jail.
Oh, so they found all of tricks to get away.
We're talking halacha, but this is really the opinion of a guy. It's a human being. That's what Osher Weiss thinks. And I think this is not a question of the intimate intricacies of being a Jew.
No, so here I'll say just briefly, Rabbi Asher Weiss he is here interpreting halacha. He looks what's the source of Dina de Malchut Adina, and he concludes that the source of Dina de Malchut Adina doesn't extend to this case. No, that's his analysis of halacha. If you'll say personal, then any posek is just a person. No, but no, they're analyzing sources and basing themselves on these sources. Let's go now to the Rambam in Hilchos Melachim. The Rambam in Hilchos Melachim says the following: Ein hamelech nilcham tchila, ela milchemet mitzvah. The king, when he arrives in Israel, so the first wars that he wages, is milchemet mitzvah. So what is milchemet mitzvah? Eizohi milchemet mitzvah. So here the Rambam gives 3 examples. Milchemet shiva amamim, the war to conquer Israel, meaning the war against the Knaani, Perizi, Shiva Amamim, the 7 nations. Milchemet Amalek. Yeah, the Torah commands you, so let's see. Milchemet Mitzvah, meaning wars of commandment. So we have a mitzvah to conquer the 7 nations. Yeah, when you end it. We have another separate commandment to fight Amalek. Yeah, we're approaching Purim. And the third example that the Rambam gives, his basis for that is the Yerushalmi, probably, Ezrat Yisrael or Svara. Ezrat Yisrael miyad tsar sheba'aleim. The third kind of Milchemet Mitzvah is helping the people of Israel to rescue them from an enemy, a tsar, that is attacking them. So, 7th of October, is it a Milchemet Mitzvah?
Of course.
Why?
It's the third one.
The third one, clearly. No one can argue that the third example of the Rambam falls under the umbrella, falls under the umbrella of Milchemet Mitzvah. We can't think of a greater example for Ezrat Yisrael Miyad Hatzar Shebalim than Simchas Torah. Now, ואחר כך נלחם במלחמת הרשות. So, these are the 3 milchamot mitzvah, right? Yeah, Shivat Amamim, Amalek, and Ezrat Yisrael מיצר שבעליהם. ואחר כך נלחם במלחמת הרשות. And afterwards, he fights מלחמת רשות. And what is מלחמת רשות? Optional מלחמה. היא המלחמה שנלחם עם שאר העמים כדי להרחיב גבול ישראל ולהרבות בגדולתו ושומעו. So, in order to, if there is a need to expand the border, the territory of Israel, or in order to make his presence of the king, meaning of the kingdom, stronger, that's Milchemet Reshut. And now the Rambam says, מלחמת מצווה אינו צריך ליטול ברשות בית דין. In מלחמת מצווה there is no need for the king to get permission of the Sanhedrin. Milchemet mitzvah, if let's say there is an attack, 7th of October, so the king doesn't have, before announcing a war and sending soldiers, he doesn't have to first get permission from the Sanhedrin. He has the right to do it on his own. Ela yotze me'atzmo bechol et. He can go out to that war on his own, anytime. Ve'kofeh ha'am latzet, and he can even coerce the people to go out to that war. Aval milchemet hareshut, however, the milchemet hareshut, that is in order to expand the borders or in order to bring a greater name and perhaps deterrence to the nation of Israel, eino motzi ha'am ba, he cannot take people to war, ela al pi beidin shel 71, only if he got the permission from the Sanhedrin. Now this balance is makes a lot of sense. Since milchemet reshut, there is a need that the Sanhedrin will make all kinds of considerations here. Is that a thing? Is the situation now requires risking lives of Jewish soldiers, or even maybe moral considerations, even maybe towards the enemy? Meaning to take all the considerations. That's why in Milchemet Reshut there is a need of a consultation with the Sanhedrin. But in Milchemet Mitzvah, no need for consultation, and that also makes sense. These are clear mitzvos of the Torah. Or if there's a danger, an enemy now attacks us, so I need to ask the Sanhedrin. We're going to war. That's it. The government decides, and that's it. Government king. We'll see that soon. Yeah.
Isn't there a simple answer to part of that? Sounds you did. Defense.
Okay, we'll see that. Ken, we'll see that. Yeah, what?
What about Shushan and would that be considered a milchemet mitzvah to fight against the Sar Tzavor?
What?
Tzvat Yisrael miyad Sar Tzavor.
Tsar Sheba Aleim, not Tsar Tzava, Tsar Sheba Aleim, but it's okay. Yeah, it's both. It's both Amalek and this. Okay. Now I promised. Let's read the next Rambam, and then I'll make my promise. Promises should be kept. Rambam in the 2 chapters afterwards, Perek Zayin, you see, that's Hilchos Melachim. Now, if you can understand, this Rambam definitely is not based on Dina de Malchuta Dina. Dina de Malchuta Dina is a general concept regarding Goyish government. Here we're talking about Milchamot Yisrael, the king of Israel, mitzvos that the Jews were commanded by God, Amalek, or, as he said, self-defense, Ezat Yisrael miyad Tsar Sheba Aleim, as a Milchamot mitzvah. Now, let's look at the Rambam, Perek Zayin, Halacha Tetvav. Umeachar sheikanes v'kishrei milchama. That's a description about how should a Jewish soldier, feel when he's in a war, a halachic war, either Milchemet Mitzvah or Milchemet Reshut that was agreed by the Sanhedrin. The Jewish soldier, once he is involved in war, Yisha'en al mikvei Yisrael u'moshi'o be'etzra. He should rely on God that saves us at times of trouble. Ve'yeda. My Rabbi Avraham Kannai used this term as the main reason for why yeshiva bachors should participate in war. Here I'm starting to fulfill my promise. 1 second. Ve'yeda she'al yichud Hashem hu oseh milchama. The Jewish soldier should know that the war, even if the outspoken of the reason is we're not happy with you about this or about this, we're not happy that you have territories, we're not happy that you don't have territories, whatever it is, tachlis, the deep root of the war is al yichud Hashem. Ve'yasim nafsho bechapo. And the Rambam says here clearly, he should risk his life. Right? Remember that's the topic of our shir. V'chai b'hem v'lo she'yamut b'hem. When it's a war of Israel, a milchemet mitzvah, the Rambam says the Jewish soldier should yasim nafsho bechapo. He should risk his life. Velo yira, velo yefached. Okay, that's not easy. Lo yira, lo yefached, velo yachshov, lo beishto, velo bebanav. אלא ימחה זיכרונם מלבו ויפנה מכל דבר במלחמה. He should be focused on the war. Okay? Now, after reading these two Rambams, I must give here a side comment about current events, as I said. There is a rabbi, happens to be a chief rabbi actually, that said some poor statements on Motzei Shabbos. And what I'll comment here, and it comes directly to our topic, in my shul in Ramot, so everyone that is in walking distance can come this Shabbat afternoon to my shir in Ramot. The topic of the shir this Shabbat is Chiyuv Bnei Yeshivot B'Milchemet Mitzvah. Okay? Now, there are a lot of sources for that, but look, the Rambam has a very, very clear list in Hilchos Malachim who is exempt from Milchemet Reshut, and the Mishnah, and consequently the Rambam are ruling halacha lamaisa that Milchemet Mitzvah hakol yotzin. That's the Mishnah in Sotah. Afilu chatan mechadro vekala mechupata, even a groom from his room and a bride from her chuppah. And by the way, the Levush, who is one of the Rishonim, adds vekol sheken talmidei chachamim. Stam, I'm saying. Okay? Now, Rav Yitzchak Yosef quoted the Rambam at the end of Hilchot Shmita v'Yovel that says that Shevet Levi are dedicated to Torah learning, and that anyone who wants to be like Shevet Levi is welcome to be so. So, indeed, the Rambam, that's his way, at the end of each volume, finishes, and that's the end of the volume of Zraim, so the end of Hilchot Shmita, ends with Agadic inspirational words. Anyone who takes that Rambam and infers from it, like Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, that means that Talmidei Chacham, that Yeshiva Bachars are exempt from Milchemet Mitzvah, that's not, it doesn't hold water. Rambam Hilchot Melachim, that's the location where the Rambam should mention who is obligated and who is exempt. His halachic writing in Hilchot Melachim. And clearly, he doesn't write that Torah learners are exempt from Milchemet Mitzvah, simply because they're not. And just to end this point, it's a much broader discussion and many more sources to analyze. But Rabbi Isser Zalman Meltzer, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, my Rebbe Rav Lichtenstein wrote a whole article about this, was published in tradition and then translated to Hebrew. Zot Torat HaEsder. That was printed in the early 80s, I believe. And, maybe even the 70s, I'm not sure. And he quoted that Rabbi Isser Zalman Meltzer, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, said that anyone who uses the Rambam in Hilchot Shmita v'Yovel about Shevet Levi to justify an exemption of yeshiva bachars from Milchemet Mitzvah is an aval b'rshut haTorah. So that's what Rabbi Isser Zalman Meltzer Zatzal thought about Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef. Okay, let's continue. Sefer HaChinuch, Parashat Vayetchanan, ועובר על זה, אוקיי? ועובר על זה, ובא לידו אחד מהם, ויכול להורגו. Oh, no, I need to bring the context. Okay, I'm sorry. But first, let's get back to our topic. So, after we discussed Dina de Malchuta Dina as one possible halachic basis for the fact what gives an authority to a government, a king or a government to risk the life of soldiers. So Dina de Malchuta Dina was one answer. And the second answer that Rav Asher Weiss, Rav Kook agree with, Rav Asher Weiss agree with, is simply Milchemet Mitzvah, okay? Meaning not Dina de Malchuta Dina, but there are wars that are established in the Torah, Jewish wars, as mitzvot. Ezrat Yisrael Miyad Tsar is one example. So therefore, and in war, what's the meaning of a war? If the Torah commands to do war, then if the Torah commands to do war, then the Torah also intrinsically acknowledges the situation that a soldier risks his life, because that's the essence of war. So I return to my original question. Hey, only one has to risk his life, only 4 or 3 averot. The answer is right. That's on the individual level. But the minute that on the there we have Hilchos Medina, we have Hilchot HaKlal, and part of Hilchot HaKlal that the Torah says Klal Yisrael should do wars, or has a mitzvah to do wars in this case, in this case, in this case. So if the Torah says this is a mitzvah war, that means that a soldier is risking his life. Okay, that's the very simple approach to this. Now, here I have a little discussion. I'm wondering whether to skip it or not. You know what? Yeah, we could skip that. That's a nice fourth, but we can skip it. Go to page 2. Go, please, to page 2. So says Rav Asher Weiss in the Minchat Asher, V'al ken nir'eh. Yes, if you have a different imud. Everyone found it? It's right. It's the source right after the Sefer HaChinuch and Minchat Chinuch that I skipped. Okay? V'al ken nir'ah. It's you have page 2. Page 2 right here. V'al ken nir'ah. V'al ken nir'eh. It's the V'al ken nir'eh de'ein halacha zo ela b'milchemet Yisrael bilvad. Yeah. After he dismissed the idea of Dina de Malchuta Dina and said, and therefore a Jew should get away from participating in a war of a foreign regime, and you heard what I commented on this, but he says, Al ken nir'eh de'ein halacha zo ela b'milchemet Yisrael bilvad, that the halacha that a soldier should risk his life is applicable, according to his opinion, only in a war of the people of Israel. Umidinei milchamahi. It's not on the basis of Dina de Malchuta Dina, but the halacha category here is Dinei milchama. Yeah, the Torah gives laws about wars of Israel. Velo mibaye b'milchemet mitzvah shel kibush haaretz. And needless to say that this is applicable in a milchemet mitzvah of conquering the land, or milchama neged tsar ve'oyev, or a war against an enemy. שבא להשמיד את ישראל, וכמו שכתב הרמב"ם בהלכות מלכים, the Rambam that we read, אלא אף במלחמת הרשות, but even in מלחמת רשות, כיוון שהתורה התירה למלך לישראל להילחם מלחמת הרשות, since the Torah allowed a king to announce a מלחמת רשות, of course only after a permission also from the Sanhedrin, ומטבע המלחמה, and the nature of war, shenoflim b'chalalim, that you have, unfortunately, soldiers being killed. Al kochach, consequently, she'atorah hetira sikun nefashot b'milchama. So it's clear that the Torah was matir, risking lives in a war. And now he has a shtickle pilpul here. Yesh le'ayen lefi ze. And now he says, I have a doubt. האם היתר זה אינו אלא במה שבהכרח מסתכן החייל וילחמו באויב? Is this heter only to the soldier when he is involved in the war? או שמא נאמר, or maybe we should say, כיוון שהותרה הותרה. At a time of war, one should risk himself. ומצווה היא לסכן את נפשו במלחמה, אף בסכנות שאינן בהכרח קשורות לעצם המלחמה. I'll explain you an example. When he discusses our good old Or Sameach in the Rotzeach Bishgaga, so what was the issue there? That the Rotzeach Bishgaga, let's say he is the chief army of staff, and now he is locked in his sheltered city. and now all the people of Israel need him. Now, by going out, he's risking his life that the Goel Adam will kill him. Now, that's not the danger of the war. That's a different danger. So, is the heter to a soldier to risk his life only limited to risking his life in war against the enemy, or anything that is needed for the war, he should risk his life? Okay, so here he has this suffix. By the way, my take on this is that, look, if it's a situation of a war and the people of Israel need you, okay, so that's part of the war, to risk your life from the Goel Adam. Okay, but now what I want to show you is very fascinating tshuvos, halachic tshuvos, of Rav Kook. Rav Kook was a giant, and we usually know him as a giant in philosophy, in machshava. But you need to understand that Rav Kook was a giant in everything. And his halacha and agada, here we'll see how they intertwine. It's a good example. But here you have very long tshuvot that I gave you just some little samples of it. And it was I enjoyed so much reading these tshuvot because of the halachic analysis and discussions that were there.
Is it father or son?
No, the father. And what's interesting is that Reb Usher Weiss took two ideas that Rav Kook said clearly, but he doesn't quote Rav Kook. And he says Laniyut dati kacha, and actually Rav Kook wrote it years before. And since I know Rav, I think he just simply doesn't know that Rav Kook wrote it. So, which is maybe a problem of itself, but okay. So, le'inyan. So now, writes Rav Kook here. Shut mishpat kohen siman kuf mem gimel. I'll just give you the context. Rav Kook is corresponding with I think he was a rich person, but also a rabbi. Happens. Rav Shin Zayin Penis, okay? Shin Zayin Penis. And Penis wants to, and that has to do with what I answered you before. You remember I presented here two visions of Rambam and Tosfos, whether Mesirat Nefesh is a binary system. Either you're obligated to be Moser your Nefesh, or you're prohibited to be Moser your Nefesh, and you must eat not kosher, for instance. I presented it as the Rambam's vision, as opposed to the Tosfos vision, that there is also a middle ground, meaning there is some cases that you're not obligated to be Moser to risk your life, but if you want to do it, you're pious. It's okay. Now, Penis wanted to say that the Rambam Davka agrees with Tosfot, that there is this option of giving up your life even though you're not obligated to do so. So he was trying to claim that the Rambam, even though when you read the code book it appears, as I said, that there's no such category, an option to risk your life. He said, yeah, the Rambam does have that, and he tried to bring proofs from here and from there and from here and from there. And Rav Kook holds like what I said and dismisses all his proofs. And so he brought in Penis all kinds of examples of people that risked their lives in order to save Klal Yisrael. Okay? He gave all kinds of examples of people who risked their life. I'll just give you, and I remember Daniela asked me in the WhatsApp, since I'm giving here next week a shir, can I tie it to Tani Tester? So yes, I will tie it, but it's tied already now, and that is, Esther is an example of a lady that risked her life coming into the palace to save Klal Yisrael. And there are all kinds of discussions here of Rav Kook and Penis, how what was her halachic basis to do it? And we'll go into it even more next week. But at any rate, says, so Penis wanted to bring it as an example. Hey, here I have some examples with no obligation and still a very praiseworthy action. And Rav Kook tells him, no, there's no proof from here. And he says, Ule'inyan hatzalat klal Yisrael. You see that? And in the case of saving Klal Yisrael, I wrote already beforehand that לעניות דעתי, מטעם הוראת שעה ולמגדר מילדה נגע בה. Okay, please let me explain you these sentences next week, because this will be the topic for next week. Okay, but let's now go to the third line in the source. וממלחמת מצווה, because that's what we're dealing with now, נכון? וממלחמת מצווה לעניות דעתי אין ללמוד כלל. You can't prove, says Rav Kook to Penis, anything from the fact that a soldier is allowed and perhaps even obligated to risk his life when he's at war, when he's in milchemet mitzvah. Because, as we know, the Rambam, we've seen that the same Rambam that holds the binary system, the same Rambam, he himself said in Hilchot Melachim, we read it together, that a soldier in a milchemet mitzvah, even milchemet reshut, yasim nafsho bechapo, should risk his life. So he says, milchemet mitzvah, you can't learn anything. De'al kolchach, because you must say, inyanei haklal, de milchamot, yotz'im memichlal zeh v'chai bahem. Okay, here there is a direct reference to the title of the shir. Yeah, I said v'chai bahem v'lo she'emut bahem bezman milchama. So it says Rav Kook, the most simple, intuitive statement. When there is a milchama of a klal, because by the way, there is no milchama of a prat. Yeah, milchama is between nations. Okay, so inyanei haklal de milchamot yotz'im memichlal zeh v'chai bahem. V'chai bahem is not applicable regarding the soldier. The soldier won't say, oh, I'm not now going to Chan Yunis because v'chai bahem. Okay? No. Sharei gam milchemet reshut muteret hi. Even a milchemet reshut is permitted. Ve'ech matzinu heiter, and how can we find a heter? Lachnis nefashot rabot besakana bishvil harvacha, to risk lives of many people just because there is a terrible, let's say, economic condition. Ela de milchama ve'ilchot tzibur shiny. You can't compare hilchot tzibur to the laws of individual. That regarding the laws of individuals, we say you don't risk your life only for 3 averot: avodah zarah, gilui arot, v'shfichut damim. And now he adds, ve'ulai hu michlal mishpatei melucha. And perhaps, says Rav Kook, this is part of the laws of the king. Mishpatei melucha. Shayu vadai rabim v'nimsarim ba'uma. There were many special laws of the klal. Yeah? Mishpatei melucha. כמו שכתב הרמב"ם, דאין רשות למלך להרוג אלא בסייף, וכי שאין לו כוח להפקיר ממון. ועוד, וכל אלה ההסכת, ועוד כיוצא הם שרידים שנשארו לנו ממשפטי המלוכה. Meaning, Rav Kook claims to Rav Penis, the laws of melucha are not only that a king should not have too many horses and he shouldn't have too many. That's part of mishpat, but mishpatei melucha is also that there was a whole judicial system, yeah, as the Ran says is in the drashot, that aside from Dinei Torah, there are laws of how the king should act and what are his authorities, etc. And part of it is that he could wage wars, milchemet mitzvah, milchemet reshut, etc. And then he says, aval hachovah. Okay, now I'm skipping again the last sentence. Ve'en shayach. Now I'm going to the next tshuva. En shayach lilmod klal mima shenechnasim ba. Ba הכוונה in a war. Yeah? You can't, he says again to Rabbi Penis, you can't learn anything from the fact that when you enter a war, you're entering risks to kill and to be killed, על פי טבע העולם. דזהו מצוותו בכך. That's the commandment, to do a war. כשם שאין ללמוד מחייבי מיתות בית דין שהורגים אותם, לקיים המצווה שלהם, כי אם בדינו. ומצווה כללית, ויראת הרע מקרבך, לומר שיש מצווה שאינה נדחית מפני פיקוח נפש. וזהו עיקר המצווה. He gives them an analogy. A Sanhedrin executes people. Let's say a person that violated Shabbos and there were 2 Eidim, so how come v'chai bahem? No, the commandment on Sanhedrin was to kill such a person. The same thing here. The commandment is to do a war. If there is a commandment to do a war, it means that soldiers are risking their lives and they're also killing enemies. That's the meaning of war. איך שיהיה על כל פנים הסבר הדבר של היתר המסירה לסכנה במלחמות, אם לדעתי שהוא עניין מיוחד ומהלכות מלכים או באופן אחר, either according to my approach that this is the laws of Melucha based on הלכות מלכים or any other explanation, אבל ודאי אין שייך כלל לדון מזה על איסורים אחרים. You can't compare it to the individual halachas of Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arashve. If one still wants to be a pious and not violate Shabbos or not eat non-kosher, Gentiles force him not to eat kosher, and he says, no, I'm a pious, I'm Moser right after. Says Rav Kook, Rambam will say, no, you have to eat the Machlot Asur. But here a soldier risks his life. Well, Ma'kesher. What's the, it's a total different thing, total different topic. ועל דבר מה שכתבתי, now look at אות י"ג, very important. ועל דבר מה שכתבתי, שענייני, no, wait a minute, the most, okay, time calculation, let's read י"ג, and we'll have to read also כתביו, okay. ועל דבר מה שכתבתי, regarding what I wrote, שענייני המלחמות הם ממשפטי המלוכה, what I claimed, that the issues of war are part of the laws of Melucha. Masig kvod torato, he says, you challenge me, ואומר שאין משפט המלוכה, כי אם בדבר שהוא כבוד המלך. That the only laws of wars are regarding the honor of war. How many horses he has, what are his rights, etc. אין הדבר כן. Rav Kook says, you're wrong. Rabbi Pinas, you're wrong. כי אם כל דבר כללי הנוגע לאומה, any halacha that is regarding the nation, the Klal Yisrael, is something that has to do with משפטי המלוכה. שיש וגם כל תיקון של הוראת שעה, the king, his mission is to fix things, לגדור בפני עושה עוולה. הכל הוא בכלל משפטי המלוכה, שיש רשות למלך להתנהג בהם כפי ראות עיניו. The king has a right to do it according to his best judgment. אפילו כשאינו נוגע כלל לטובתו ולכבודו. Even if it has nothing to do with his authority, his kavod. The king's mission is to fix the nation spiritually and materially. Yeah? כי אם לטובתן ולכבודן של ישראל. That's משפטי האומה. The good, the welfare, the benefit of the people of Israel. וכמו שכתב בהלכות בפרק י"ג מהילולה, כל ההורגים נפשות שלא בראיה ברורה, יש רשות למלך להורגן. Let's say there's a lot of murderers in the people of Israel, chas v'shalom, and if you apply this strict dinei Torah, then there will be a Gan Eden to murderers, because in order to convict someone, you need 2 witnesses, hatra. It says in the Gemara that Beit Din that was executing more than once in 70 years is a katlanit. But let's say that now there's no deterrence. So he says that's where the king comes. The king has the right, if he sees that there is a problem, there are many murderers in the people of it, so he has the right to execute people, even not according to the procedures of Dinei Torah. ולתקן העולם, he fixes the world, כפי מה שההצעה צריכה, ולשבר יד רשעי העולם, and to kill the enemy, the wicked people in the world. הרי שכוח משפט המלוכה מגיע הרבה יותר מחוק כבודו וזכותו של המלך. Here you see that the authorities and the laws and the halachas of a kingdom and king are much more broader than just the laws of his honor. Last statement that we must do, because that answers your question. You asked, well, we're talking here about king. What does that have to do with a democratic regime in Medinat Israel? So Rav Kook, even though he passed away in 35, look at what he wrote about that. Uma shekatav kvod torato. He says to Rabbi Pinus, I know I'm stealing your time, but we have to finish this statement. Uma shekatav kvod torato. And what Rabbi Pinus wrote, דאם מלחמות ממשפט המלוכה הן, איך נלחמו החשמונאים כנגד חיילות סוריה בלא מלך? He asked them, Rav Kook, Rav Pinus asked Rav Kook, you're saying that the halachic validity, the halachic authority is based on the laws of kingdom, that there are wars and Milchemet Mitzvah. Well, the Hashmonaim, they did war, and there were periods that there was no king there. Bachlal. Nothing. How come? So Rav Kook answers him. Hine ala milchama yesodit shel hashmonaim, regarding the basic war of the Hashmonaim, שהייתה בייחוד נגד השמד ושעת גזירה של היוונים, להעבירם תורתך ולהעבירם מחוקי, להשכיחם תורתך ולהעבירם מחוקי, על זה אין מה לשאול כלל. So first of all he says, it's not a problem at all, because as we know, you should be moser your nefesh when there is שעת השמד. ועל המלחמות הבאות אחר כך, I'm skipping to line number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth row there, ועל המלחמות הבאות אחר כך, שגם המלכים הכשרים שבהם נלחמו, אז הלא היו כבר מלכים. וחוץ מזה, now we're getting to the point about the Israeli democratic state that they're, וחוץ מזה, נראים הדברים, that's a very widely quoted paragraph from Rav Kook in many areas of halacha regarding the modern state of Israel. וחוץ מזה נראים הדברים, שבזמן שאין מלך, at a time that there is no king, כיוון שמשפטי המלוכה, the laws of kingdom, הם גם כן במה שנוגע למצב הכללי של האומה. We established in the previous paragraph that the laws of the king are not only regarding his honor and his rights, but regarding taking care of the welfare of the people, of the nation, fixing the spiritual and material situation of the nation and the world in general. So he said, כיוון שמשפטי המלוכה הם גם כן במה שנוגע למצב הכללי של האומה, חוזרים אלה הזכויות של המשפטים ליד האומה בכללה. Meaning, the king is only a shaliach. Halachically, the rights of these laws, the authority of them, the source of them, are really the nation. The king is an agent of the nation. So these laws are getting back to what? To the nation in general. And therefore, it doesn't really matter whether it's a king or a Jewish government elected by the people. At the end of the day, these are the laws of Klal Yisrael. Okay? ובייחוד נראה שגם כל שופט שקם בישראל דין מלך יש לו. Says in addition, he says, it really belongs to the Jewish people. Okay, and here if the government represents the Jewish people, okay, then that's enough. This is a Milchemet Mitzvah, based just like a king announced Milchemet Mitzvah. It's the same thing here. When Netanyahu announced at the 7th of October, we're in a war, that's it. It's a Milchemet Mitzvah. And now he says, also it seems that at every shofet shekam b'Yisrael, every judge that is coming in Israel, din melech yeshlo. He has the halachic authority of a king. So even if the government in Israel don't have or prime minister don't have the halachic status of a king, but they do have the halachic status of a shofet. לעניין כמה משפטי המלוכה. And shofet has it, ובייחוד למה שנוגע להנהגת הכלל. and especially anything that has to do with Hilchot Tzibur, with things that are relating to the klal. And the war is definitely one of them. ואפילו בעניינים פרטיים, הרי פילגש, שאינם, אוקיי, אבל למה שנוגע, I'm now in 2 lines before the end, אבל למה שנוגע להנהגת הכלל, כל שמנהיג את האומה, anyone who how do you say מנהיג? Who leads the nation, דן הוא במשפטי המלוכה. He is under the umbrella of משפטי המלוכה, שהם כלל צורכי האומה, that are the general needs of the nation, הדרושים לשעתם ולמעמד העולם, that are needed for its time and for the status, the spiritual status of the world. So, in sum, we asked, what is the halachic authority to risk lives? After all, it's not the 3 Aveirot. We gave 2 answers. The first approach was Dina de Malchuta Dina. The second approach, which is a more neat approach, is it's Milchemet Mitzvah, that everyone is obligated to participate. In the Milchemet Mitzvah, of course, people are being unfortunately killed, but that's the nature of Milchama. And then you ask, well, Milchemet Mitzvah, a king should do it. So here we got Rav Kook and said, no, it's not necessarily a persona, a king. It's the laws of the nation, and anyone who leads the nation is, as part of Mishpatei HaMelucha, can send Jewish soldiers to war. War.